let's dive into Ampinity Energy. They're making some serious moves in India's energy storage market, all about battery energy storage systems, those massive power banks we keep hearing about.
Yeah, it's really interesting how Ampinity is going beyond just supplying batteries. They're trying to solve some of India's biggest energy problems,
Hmm.
like those blackouts and the huge demand, and all the problems with using those, uh, dirty diesel generators.
Right. From all these company brochures and analyses I've been looking at, it really seems like India's power grid's in a tough spot. Makes you think, have you ever been stuck in a power outage? Like, imagine that, but for a whole country.
Oh, absolutely. And you see it in the recent data. Last year, India hit a record electricity demand. 250 gigawatts led to the biggest power shortage they've had in over 10 years. And it's not just the peak demand, it's also their infrastructure. Remember those transformer failures in Kerala? Almost 600 during that heat wave.
That's kind of scary, huh? Your whole power system about to collapse. It really shows how important it is to find, reliable solutions, especially with India wanting to use more clean energy.
Exactly. And that's where battery energy storage systems come in. BESS. Like, think of it as a huge shock absorber for the whole grid.
Yeah.
When the sun's not out or the wind's not blowing, BESS can, smooth things out, keep everything running.
So it's not just about keeping the lights on, it's about making clean energy reliable enough to actually power a country. That's huge. But so where does Ampinity fit into all this? What makes their BS different?
Well, they're doing a few things. First, their systems are modular, so you can start small, maybe just enough for your home or business if the power goes out, then scale up later as you need more.
That's smart. Kind of like Legos. You build your own energy storage setup, right? What else makes them different?
Well, they've also made their BESS really adaptable. Their systems can work on or off the grid,
Mhm.
so they can work with a lot of different customers.
That makes sense. Not putting all their eggs in one basket,
Right.
especially in a place as diverse as India.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's how easy they are to set up. Their systems come in these shipping containers.
Yeah.
Makes them super easy to move and install. No huge construction projects. Just drop it in place and plug it in.
Pretty slick. Sounds like they've really thought about how to get these things running quickly. But let's talk about the actual power. Like, could one of these things keep my house running if the power went out?
Oh, definitely. Their systems range from 215 kilowatt hours up to 6.7 megawatt hours. To give you an idea, a typical home in India uses about 10 kilowatt hours a day.
So even their smallest system could keep your lights on for days if there's an outage. That's got to be a good feeling.
Yeah. And their power output is impressive too. We're talking 100 kilowatts to 1 megawatt. So they can handle anything from your home appliances to big industrial equipment.
Okay, I'm impressed. But beyond just the specs, what makes Ampinity stand out from everyone else?
Well, one thing is their focus on new technology. They're working with some of the top companies in the world to use the latest battery tech and integrate it into the smart grid.
So they're not just trying to catch up, they want to be leaders. But what does all this smart grid integration actually mean for people? Would you even notice it at home?
It's not just a fancy term. It means their BS can talk to the main power grid. It helps balance supply and demand better. Like imagine a really advanced traffic system, but for electricity. It could even save you money on your energy bills and make the whole grid more stable.
Now that's something I can get behind. And it fits perfectly with India's plans to modernize their whole energy system.
Exactly. And they've made sure it's easy to use too. Ampinity has this app. Lets you monitor your BSS remotely, track your energy use, and even see how it's performing.
Like a Fitbit for your energy, huh? That's going to be a big selling point for both homeowners and businesses trying to be more energy conscious.
You got it. And it's clear they're serious about safety and how long these things last. Their systems have fire suppression, advanced temperature control, and tough enclosures so they can be outside, all designed for reliability and peace of mind.
Okay, sounds good so far. They've got the tech, the vision, they're focused on the customer. But is there actually a market for all this in India? We were just talking about whether there's even a market for all this BS tech in India. So is Infinity just way ahead of everyone, or are they on to something huge?
Well, looking at the projections, I'd say their timing is perfect. The Indian BSS market is about to explode. We're talking going from about $7.8 billion now to a massive $32 billion by 2030.
Wow, that's not just growth. That's like a whole energy revolution. What's driving all this demand? Is it all because India's going for renewable energy?
It's definitely a big part of it. India wants to hit 500 gigawatts of non-fossil fuel energy by 2030, and they're making good progress. But BS isn't just about green energy. It's also about making things reliable, keeping things steady.
I see. It's like India's trying to build a whole new energy system, one that's cleaner, more stable, and not so dependent on, the weather, and BES is a big part of that.
Exactly. Remember those transformer failures we talked about? BES can act as a backup, stops
Mhm.
those small outages from becoming huge blackouts. And with climate change and all the crazy weather, that kind of backup is going to be essential.
So it's not just about being green, it's about protecting India's energy future from, well, pretty much anything. But how's Ampinity going to make money from all this? What's their plan?
Well, they're not just relying on one thing. They've got a pretty smart plan, actually. First, they're selling their big BES units to big customers like utilities, factories, those kinds of places.
Makes sense. That's the usual way, right? If you're selling a big, expensive piece of equipment. But what about smaller customers, people who don't need a massive system or can't afford to buy it outright?
That's where the rental option comes in. They're leasing BES units. Makes it much more affordable for a lot of businesses and groups.
Ah, the subscription model. It's everywhere now, even in energy. Seems like a smart move, especially for people just starting out with energy storage.
Exactly. Makes it easier to get started. You can use more or less as you need. Plus, Ampinity takes care of all the maintenance and monitoring for all their systems.
So they're going for that steady income. Smart way to build a stable business and keep customers happy.
You got it. And it makes sense here. BESS is still pretty new. People want to know their systems are being taken care of and working right.
Okay, so they have a good plan for making money, but actually becoming a leader in the market, that's a whole other thing. How confident are they can get that 10% market share by 2027?
Well, they know there's competition. The Indian BES market is attracting everyone. Big companies, small companies, everyone wants a piece of it.
It's like a gold rush. Everyone wants to get in on the action. So who are they up against? Big energy companies or new startups?
It's a mix, actually. You've got those big global companies like Tesla and Fluence. They've got the experience and money. And then you've got a bunch of Indian startups. Many of them are focusing on, specific things or types of customers.
So it's a crowded market with a lot of different strategies. Why does Ampinity think they can get such a big chunk of it?
They're banking on their mix of technical expertise, their knowledge of India, and, just understanding how the Indian market works. They're not just bringing in technology, they're adapting it for Indian customers.
Smart strategy. Think global, act local. Right. But even with great technology and a good plan, there are always risks. What could go wrong for Ampinity?
Oh, for sure. Nothing's guaranteed, especially in an industry that's changing so fast. One big challenge is, what if that technology changes?
Right, the battery industry is moving at warp speed. What if a new, better, cheaper battery comes along and suddenly Ampinity's systems are outdated?
Exactly. They have to stay on top of things, keep innovating and adapting. If they get complacent, they'll get left behind.
Like a game of chess, always thinking ahead. But technology isn't the only thing they have to worry about, right? What about the rules and regulations in India?
Definitely something to watch. India's government is generally supportive of renewable energy and storage, but the specific policies are still being worked out. Things could change unexpectedly, or there could be bureaucratic hurdles. You know how it goes.
So it's a bit of a balancing act, navigating a system that's always changing. And what about all the supply chain problems everyone's been talking about? Could that affect Ampinity's ability to get the parts they need?
It's a valid concern. India relies a lot on imports for certain things, especially those lithium-ion battery cells. Any problems in the global supply chain could mean delays, higher costs, even shortages that could really hurt their plans.
So it's a lot to deal with. Fierce competition, fast-changing technology, uncertain regulations, and a fragile global supply chain. Can we even predict if they'll succeed in the long run?
It's impossible to say for sure. But one thing's clear, Ampinity is coming in strong. They've got a vision, a plan, and they know India.
And it sounds like they're aware of the risks and trying to manage them.
Exactly. But let's step back for a second and think bigger. Even if Ampinity doesn't hit that 10% market share, they're still part of something much bigger.
Okay, I like where you're going with this. How does Ampinity's story fit into the bigger trends we're seeing in India and the world?
Well, India's push for energy storage is part of a global shift.
Hmm.
Countries everywhere are realizing we need to move away from fossil fuels,
Huh?
and fast.
Right, it's like the whole world is waking up to climate change and saying we need to change now.
Exactly. And BSS is essential for that. It's how we unlock the full potential of renewable energy. It's how we store the sun's power for later.
It's like we're finally figuring out clean energy, making it reliable and accessible enough to power our lives.
And the best part is, it's not just about reducing emissions. It's also about making our energy systems more resilient and fairer. Imagine a world where even the most remote villages have reliable, clean electricity. That could lift them out of poverty and help them participate in the modern world.
That's a powerful vision. It's not just about technology, it's about progress and justice. But let's be realistic. This kind of change isn't going to happen overnight. What are some of the things we need to deal with to make this vision real?
You're right, there are still hurdles. One big one is cost. BESS is still pretty expensive, especially compared to those dirty fossil fuels.
So how do we make it affordable for everyone, not just the wealthy? Do we just wait for the technology to get cheaper, or are there other solutions? We were just talking about how this all connects to you, the listener. We've gone over a lot in this deep dive, haven't we? India's energy issues, the potential of BESS, Ampinity's place in it all. But let's make it a bit more personal, shall we?
I think it's easy to get lost in the technical stuff. All those megawatts and gigawatts. And forget, that those numbers represent real people, real lives affected by these energy problems.
That's true. It's easy to just see something like those transformer failures, the 600 in Kerala, as just a statistic. But each one is a family sweating it out in the heat, businesses losing money, hospitals trying to keep their machines running.
Exactly. And that's what makes Ampinity's story interesting.
Hmm.
They're not just selling a product, they're offering, hope. They're trying to make a future where energy isn't something you stress about, but something that helps you and lifts you up.
I remember something from one of their investor presentations that really stood out. It was about their work in rural areas, their community engagement. It's like they're not just dropping in with some fancy technology. They're really trying to understand the people they're working with.
That's so important. Tech alone can't fix these big problems. It takes empathy, understanding different cultures, and being willing to actually work together to find solutions that really work and last.
So it's not just building like power lines and batteries, it's building trust, right? So people
Yes.
feel like they're part of it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just about giving people electricity. It's about what reliable energy can do for everything else.
Hmm.
Education, healthcare, the economy. Suddenly kids can study at night. Hospitals can run their equipment. People can start businesses they couldn't before.
It's funny, something so simple like turning on a light can make such a huge difference in people's lives.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And Ampinity isn't stopping at just the equipment. They're also doing training, creating jobs, supporting local entrepreneurs, trying to build a whole energy system that can support itself.
So they're helping these communities not just use energy, but create it, manage it, really benefit from it.
Yeah, that's it. It's about seeing the big picture, how energy, the economy, and social progress are all connected.
Well, we've covered a lot, haven't we? From how BS actually works to what India's energy future might look like, and how it all fits into what's happening around the world.
We look at markets, competition, the risks, the potential. But just like any good exploration, we end up with more questions, don't we?
That's what makes it exciting, right? It always leads to new discoveries, new things to think about.
Exactly. So, as we wrap up, I want to leave you with something to ponder. Think about what innovation can do. Infinity's story shows us that even when things seem impossible, we can still find solutions. Solutions that help not just a few people, but whole communities, and maybe even the planet.
A message of hope and a bit of a challenge, too. We all have a part in this energy future, whether it's the choices we make in our own lives or supporting those who are pushing for a cleaner, more sustainable world.
So go about your day. Think about the energy that makes it all possible, the choices you make, what you buy, who you support. It all adds up. It all matters.
And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into Ampinity Energy and the Indian BES market. Thanks for listening.